Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
My favorite example from Crookes' studies of Hume has to do with Hume's accordion phenomena.
Yes.
So what you need to know is that Hume would reportedly make accordions play sometimes untouched, floating around the room, or at least held at the end away from the keys.
Mm-hmm.
And allegedly the accordions could play melodies on request. Now, Hume had said that the phenomena for the accordion playing was strongest underneath the seance table. And superficially, at least, that sounds somewhat suspicious.
Yeah.
But Crookes was an ingenious person, and he realized that if you wanted to really test this, it probably wasn't a good idea to force Hume any more than necessary out of his comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what he did. First of all, he bought a new accordion. So there could be no doubt that the accordion in question wasn't one of Hume's props that he had somehow managed to rig.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, he went to Hume's apartment, watched him change clothes to make sure he wasn't concealing some sort of device on his person. Although I have to remind you, this was 1871. It's not clear what kind of miniaturized device could have made accordions play melodies on request.
Nor did they have X-ray technology to see what he might conceal inside his body.
Right. So Crookes then brought Hume to his house,
Mm-hmm.
where Crookes had constructed a cage made out of wire and wood that just fit under his dining room table. There was room for Hume to get his hand under the table and in the cage to hold the accordion at the end away from the keys. There wasn't enough room for Hume to get his hand deeply into the cage to manipulate the accordion.
Right.
There were 9 observers present, 2 stationed on either side of Hume to make sure he wasn't taking his feet out of his boots. Although even if he had, there was still a cage down there. There was another observer stationed under the table with a lamp, watching what was going on. Under those conditions, the accordion was seen to move in and out, the keys were depressed, sounds came out of the accordion. Hume was then asked to take his hand out of the cage, place both hands on the table. An electric current was run through the cage. The accordion was still seen to flop around inside the cage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I consider that one of the strongest experiments in the history of parapsychology. No magician, despite their bluster, has been able to duplicate that phenomenon under conditions anything like those in which Hume succeeded,
Mm-hmm.
and I think for good reason.
Mm-hmm. Do you accept the spiritualist hypothesis as to how these phenomena were produced?
I'm not ready to go that far.
Mm-hmm.
We have evidence for psychokinesis without having to posit disembodied agency. And in many cases, it looks as if there are perfectly mundane reasons why the mediums succeed or fail, which make most sense in terms of their own psychology.
Yes, it does seem as if the social environment, the numinous quality of a spiritualist seance brings certain phenomena out to the fore that wouldn't otherwise occur.
Well, we often ask why we saw so much of this in the late 19th and early 20th century and see relatively little of it now. And I think one of the main reasons for that is that all of the great physical mediums of the era were convinced spiritists,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily adherents to the spiritualist religion, but they all believed that they were simply literally mediums for the phenomena, that they were just conduits between the spirit world and this world.
Psychologically, it might have been much more difficult for them to accept that they themselves were the source.
Exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
I think this situation, this mediumistic environment, took them off the hook psychologically no matter what happened. So if no phenomena occurred, or if only uninteresting phenomena occurred, the mediums didn't have to feel like failures. They could always attribute the apparent failure to an inept communicator or to a bad link with the spirit world.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as you intimated, if they succeeded, if they got good phenomena, they didn't have to fear what Freud called the omnipotence of thought. They didn't have to think to themselves, wow, if I can do this in the safe confines of a seance, who knows what havoc I might be wreaking when the seance is over.
Mm-hmm.
So they were off the hook, literally.
Yeah.